So the video recording and the slides will be emailed to you within the next day. Thanks again for joining our public management edition of this Public Works series, once again with Ed Duarte. My name is James Forrest. I'm the program coordinator for Norcal PTAC. That's the Northern California Procurement Technical Assistance Center, otherwise known as Norcal PTAC for short. It's a big mouthful there. Our procurement and public works specialist, Ed Duarte, is here once again, the main presenter for today's workshop. We also have Patricia Silva from Caltrans District 2. Thank you, as usual, Patricia, for joining us. This is the final installment in the four-part series on this topic with Ed. For those of you who missed any of the other three, you can find them on our past webinar archive on our website. I'll be guiding you to later. And for those of you who have been here for the whole ride, you deserve a free sticker or something. Thank you very much for joining. Before we hand things over to our presenters, I'm just going to give a little spiel about PTAC, so you know who we are since we're offering this event here. We are a nonprofit program. We're set up to help small businesses achieve success in the government marketplace. We're funded primarily by the Defense Logistics Agency, the DLA. We also get grant funding from state and local sources. So we offer all of our services to the public for free. Last year, we actually helped our clients win $268 million. We're hosted by the Humboldt State Sponsored Programs Foundation up in Arcata, California, where that red star is. And we provide three basic core services. We provide one-on-one counseling. So procurement specialists, for instance, Ed here, can help you individually to meet with you via phone, video conference, email, about just about any government contracting topic is within our sphere of help. If your business is located in one of our service areas here, in one of these 15 counties listed in green, we can meet you and help you through these processes, since they certainly can be a bit confusing. Second thing we offer are regular in-person and virtual workshops like this one on government contracting topics. So unlike our client services, these are open to anyone to join from anywhere. So you can check out our website at norcalptec.org/calendar. You can find more upcoming events. Our website's just packed with goodies. Third thing we offer is this bid matching profile. We can set our clients up with daily access to federal, state, local, and even prime contractor opportunities. You'll be notified when a bid is posted that matches your desired criteria that you work out with your procurement specialist. So this way you can stay on top of the opportunities available to you. It's pretty nifty. So if your business is located in one of these counties here, you can apply for services. As I mentioned, all counseling can be provided remotely, which is especially important during the COVID epidemic. So you don't need to leave your office, and it's all free. So it's a win-win situation. You can go to our website at norcalptac.org, click on the red Apply Now button on the page banner, follow the instructions through step 7. If you've ever worked with a Small Business Development Center, or SBDC, in the northern region, you should instead email me at info@norcalptac.org. You can see that at the bottom of the slides here, and I will send you a special link to apply. Quick note that we are one of 94 PTACs nationwide. So if you're not in one of these 15 counties here, we encourage you to look up and apply for your own local PTAC. Usually I just type in find a PTAC, but we also have a link here for aptac-us.org. So there's PTACs across the country. They all offer similar services. On a housekeeping note here, everyone is muted today. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can enter them into the Q&A feature window, not the chat window. So I have mentioned to everyone that we want to be using the Q&A feature. So if you have a technical issue, you can enter it in the chat. Ed will be answering your questions in the Q&A. Feel free to select the raise your hand button if you want to ask your question out loud. This can be especially helpful if Ed is asking for clarification on a question that you already typed in. And one more reminder, since we often get questions about this as we go into it, we are recording this session, and the slides and the video recording along with the documents will be sent out to you as well as posted on our website and that past webinar archive. So that's my spiel. Let's hand things over to Patricia Silva here, who will talk a bit about Caltrans. Thanks, Trish.
Thank you, James. Hello, everyone. My name is Patricia Silva, and I am the Small Business Liaison for Caltrans District 2, located in Redding, Northern California. Our district serves 7 counties: Shasta, Siskiyou, Modoc, Trinity, Lassen, Tehama, and Pelumas. Caltrans is made up of 12 districts, all from District 1 in Eureka, Northern California, down to Districts 11 and 12, located in San Diego and Irvine, Southern California. Every district has a small business liaison, such as myself, and our job is to help assist and educate businesses on how to find procurement and contracting opportunities with Caltrans. And as you can see on the slide, there's lots of useful links for you to view later. As James said, this webinar is being recorded, so please take a look at those links. Very helpful links for you to view later. The next slide also has some Caltrans resources, PDF flyers for you. The first one that we have there is the SB1 at Work flyer. So this is where you can view the Caltrans SB1 website, check out Contractor's Corner, get to know your small business district liaison, get certified if you're eligible, and then also the link to check out our Caltrans event calendar. So that PDF is there for you. The next PDF there for you is the electronic bidding guide. So this PDF is all the information for you about electronic bidding. So this is a very helpful guide in regards to our bidding process. So that is there for you. The next PDF that we have for you is our Doing Business with Caltrans brochure. So this is a really great brochure. It's a great resource for learning how to do business with Caltrans. Talks about some of the commodities we purchase, some of the service contracts that we procure, how subs can connect with primes, the competitive solicitation bid openings, and then all of our districts are there on the map with all the districts' contact information for you as well. And also talks about our CalCard program and just other additional resources for you in regards to solicitations and advertised solicitations. So that's a great little handy dandy Doing Business with Caltrans brochure. And then the next PDF that we have for you is our small business brochure. So this brochure goes over lots of information about our DBE certification, the small business and DVBE state certification, what to do once you're certified, just how our small business bid preference works. This brochure is really handy. It's the brochure from our Office of Civil Rights. So very handy resource. Also, especially if you're interested in DBE certification, this is a great resource for you as well. And all the contact information for you as well. The next PDF there is our resource link. So basically another PDF with a lot more resource links there for you, such as Bidding Connect, Bid Results, CalProcure, Contractor's Corner. So lots of great resources there for you to view later. And I would recommend looking at all of those links, and that is there for you for later as well, viewing. And then the last one is our DBE district map. So this is if you need additional assistance. Here is our map of our 12 districts, all the contact information of the 12 districts. Also has the contact information of our Office of Civil Rights and the supportive services that are offered, and also has the link to the event calendar as well, so that you can look for more research, or outreach events such as this one that you're on today throughout the 12 districts in Caltrans. So there's that for you. And then there's the contact information here for you as well. So you have a link here to where you can find all the small business liaisons for each district in Caltrans. Then we have our small business advocate email for the Office of Civil Rights. You have that as a resource to you as well, especially if you want to know more about DBE certification. There's my email as well. And then the last link there for you, again, is the Caltrans event calendar. So please feel free to look at that calendar to find more outreach events such as this one. And that's all I have. Enjoy your presentation, and back to you, James.
Thank you, Tricia. All right. I think we are ready for the main presentation. Thanks everyone for sitting tight through these intros. So with no further ado, I will give you Ed Duarte, a real expert in the field and a huge value to all of you who have joined today. So take it away, Ed.
Thank you, James. Good morning, everybody. As James said, this is the fourth session. We did 2 last week and a third yesterday. The first 3 concentrated on preparing an estimate the proper way and so you can come up with a competitive price and hopefully get awarded a project. Everything that I talked about in estimating leads up to today's subject, which is essentially, okay, I got the bid, now what do I do? Let me set the stage for that. There's 2 perspectives in public works contracting. There's the general contractor, the prime, and there is the subcontractor. You can't have one without the other, but from a legal standpoint, every public works owner prefers, unless it's a very small on-call type contract with very small contract amounts, they prefer a single point of contact, and the law is set up that way. That's why we have 3 categories for licensing. The A license, the general engineering contractor. As I said yesterday, that's the ones that build the highways, the freeways, the bridges, the water and wastewater treatment plants, the airports. There's the B license, general building contractor. That's the license that enables you to build a office building, a school building, a police station, a fire station. And then there's the subcontractors categories, and those are the C licenses. C10 being electrical, for example. The contracts for public works are set up that the prime is the single point of contact and the subs contract with the prime. As I've said before, from a legal standpoint, this was told to me by a construction attorney. In reality, in legality, the subcontractor doesn't exist in the eyes of the owner because they have a contract with the prime, and it's up to the prime to manage the subs. So I get a lot of comments over the years from subcontractors saying, "Well, I'm having all kinds of trouble with the owner, with the prime, and I'm talking to the owner, and I'm not getting any help because the owner cannot help you. You have to hash it out with the prime contractor. There are remedies available, and we'll talk a little bit about that today, for a subcontractor who's being treated unfairly. But for the most part, you have to stand up and stand up for yourself, and that's what these workshops will help you prepare to enter into a contractual relationship that works for both sides. So I'm going to talk about some of those contract requirements. I'm going to talk about the pre-construction conference. That is not the pre-bid meeting, okay? We talked about and during estimating, we go to a pre-bid meeting where the owner and the designer will meet with the contractors and say, here's the job that we're going to be talking about. Here's the job that we want you to submit a bid upon. That's the pre-bid conference. This conference, the pre-construction conference, is the kickoff meeting to start the project. Talk about the contract administrative team, the understanding what it takes to mobilize for a project, establishing good project management practices. Hang on. Okay, well, so what happens at this kickoff meeting? Well, it's a meeting between, for the obvious players, the prime, key subcontractors, the owner's rep, which could be an in-house project manager, like Caltrans has a resident engineer. It could be a construction manager that's hired as a separate entity, different than the designer. It'd be the inspectors. On a school job, you have what they call an IOR, an inspector of records. They are independent sub-consultant, and they work directly for the school district. And their job is, as you might know, suspect, is to make sure that the contractor puts in a quality project per plans and specifications and the state education code. There'll be the testing lab. Usually, 95% of the time, they're under contract directly to the owner. The designer, of course, the engineer architect. All those people, they meet at the job site or maybe possibly offsite if it's an urban area, and they're going to talk about these next points. Obviously, key player introductions and what their respective roles are going to be. There's going to be a discussion to make sure the lines of communication are established with the protocol and the chain of command. They're going to talk about the safety program. They're going to talk about the inspection and testing procedures. In other words, each one of these participants will essentially say, here's what I do, here's my role in the project, and here's how I'm going to do it. And then finally, usually what happens at the end, the contractor will bring in their initial first pass on the schedule, the contract project schedule. And everybody will look it over and discuss it. It may not be the final one, and it usually gets tweaked. It usually gets modified. But that will be one of the key points of discussion. So there's two perspectives, as I said a minute ago. There's the prime and there's the sub. What I'm going to outline this morning is all of the sequence of events that are typically going to occur for the prime contractor. For you subcontractors, you have the same types of duties, pardon me, the same type of duties, but they'll be scaled down in magnitude because there are a lot of responsibilities that the prime has to do that you do not have to do. But in general overview, this is what we're all of us kind of have to follow. So as a prime, I would be, obviously I have already selected my project manager, my superintendent, who's going to do the payroll, et cetera. So set up the admin group and assign the roles. Prepare the schedule of values and include input from the subs. Schedule of values is public works contractor talk for cost breakdown. You need to submit an invoice once a month because that's how we get paid. And that invoice is based on a schedule of values. If the schedule of values is on a contract such as a Caltrans contract, it's already done because the bid format, you recall from our first 3 sessions, the bid format that the prime turned in on bid day is already with 100, 200, 300 bid items. Each one of them has a unit price, an extended total price, and the summation of all of those is the contract value. So on a Caltrans job, if you're a concrete sub and you have item 47 curb and gutter, and you gave a price as the prime of $35 a square foot, a lineal foot. And when it comes time that you're doing curb and gutter, during those 30 days, the inspector will come, or the engineer or the CM will come out and measure how many lineal feet of curb and gutter you installed in that 30-day period. And then they simply record that, and you multiply it times your bid day unit price, and there's your billing for curb and gutter. You just multiply that by all the other items that have work proceeded on during that particular month, and that's how you get a billing. Very simple on the unit price bidding format. Little more to it with a lump sum project, and I'll show you an example. As the prime, we are responsible for the CPM schedule. It's our job. We own the schedule. So again, a smart prime and a smart sub will collaborate on including input from the subcontractors. And the reason for that is that you have checks and balances. I'll make out the project, let's say it's a 30-day project, and I have 2 days allowed for demolition. And the subcontractor who I subbed out the demo to, they come in and they tell me, I need a week. And I said, we only have 30 days to do this job. You have to get it done in 2 days, because here's all my other tasks that I have to do for the remaining 28 days. And there's no room. So since I am the prime and I have final control of the schedule, I'm giving you that window, and that's it. That's all I can give you. That was a simplified example. But what can happen in the larger projects is that the prime can say, I've only got 18 months to do this job, and I've got to sequence all the tasks and the progression of the work. And as I build that schedule, we call it a CPM, critical path method. It's done with Microsoft Project or Primavera, are the two most common softwares used. Then that schedule, it requires a lot of work, and it gets tweaked every month. It gets updated because certain tasks, they get done faster, or they get done later, or they don't get done at all. And so it's a constant process to manage a job. When you start getting into the $15, $20, $25 million jobs, or the $1 billion jobs like the Warriors, Golden State Warriors arena, the CPM schedule was literally updated weekly because it's so critical that everything happened in the proper sequence. As a prime, you start writing all your subcontracts and your purchase agreements. As a sub, you do the same thing. If you're an HVAC contractor, you can have a subcontractor. The controls people are typically subcontractors to the HVAC subcontractor. And likewise, you should use a purchase agreement. I'm going to talk about purchase agreements in a little more detail. As a prime, I have a master submittals log, and I'm going to distribute that to all my subcontractors. And again, because of the importance of a submittals log and the timing to turn all those submittals in, most public works jobs of, say, over $1 million, maybe up to $2.5 million, certainly anything above that, we include the timeline of drop dead dates for the submittals process. We include that as a parallel track on our CPM, because a lot of those drop dead dates on the submittal schedule, they affect your construction. Begin enforcing submittals deadlines from subcontractors. If you talk to any prime contractor on a public works who does public works, we're all going to tell you the same thing. getting submittals from our subcontractors in a timely manner and their suppliers is just, it's like pulling teeth. I don't know why it's a problem for every prime, but it is. I can tell you it's 100%. 100%. Every single job we do, we will always have one or two or three or more subcontractors and their suppliers who just can't seem to get their submittals in on time. And I keep talking about submittals. You may ask, well, what the Samuel is a submittal? I'm going to show you. And then lastly, prepare a mobilization plan, which is essentially like a 3-week look-ahead schedule where you're going to, this is what we have to do to move on, get started, and break ground. And there's a lot of things that have to be done. The bigger the project, especially for an urban project, for a major office building or downtown, the mobilization plan and moving on, it takes everything from permits to a SWIP plan, a SWWPP plan, to getting permits to put up a chain link fence to enclose the area. There's a lot to this, folks, and everybody has to work together to make it work. So you're underway. What are some of the rules? Well, believe it or not, I can't tell you how many times over the years we run into a subcontractor will show up and we'll say, well, when are you going to do this? When are you going to do your work? Okay, well, I'm going to get started. I'm going to do it this way and this way and this way. And I said, have you checked your contract? Have you checked my contract, the plans and specifications, which is the contract? Oh, we didn't know we had to do that. Know the plans and specs for your own scope of work like the back of your hand. And especially that goes for your field personnel, your foreman and your superintendents. Don't send them to a job site unprepared. I could give you example after example after example of people, good tradespeople, good superintendents that came on site and had not been prepared by their subcontractor owners, and they got off on the wrong foot. We monitor the job progress to stay on schedule. We do that with a 3-week look ahead schedule. I'll show that to you in a minute. Make sure your job is properly staffed, because as a prime, if I see that you don't have enough people on the job to maintain satisfactory progress, a rate of progress, I'm going to be writing that down. My people are going to write that down. And if this job gets delayed, we're going to show you 3 weeks worth of daily diaries that shows you had 1 and 2 people on a job where you should have had 5. So make sure you have your jobs properly staffed. You're going to keep, as a prime, you're going to try to keep efficient control of substance suppliers, prepare a checklist of procedures for your field crew, and finalize your selection of the crew size. Your crew size should be reflective of how you bid the in-house labor. This process evolved about 15 years ago, and it's grown in complexity to the point now where most water and wastewater treatment plants and your large jobs, the primes, we learned that it really helps to go over what I just talked about on a one-on-one basis. And many contracts have it written into the specifications. Quote, prime contractor shall conduct a pre-construction meeting for each major subcontractor. What does that mean? Just what we talked about. Review their contract and their scope, talk with them about their submittals, review their portion of the schedule, go over the QA, QC procedures for their work, review the safety program protocols, and remind them of the chain of command. We do that for all major projects, major subcontractors, sometimes all the subcontractors, just to make sure, one more time, that everybody's on the same page. When you think about it, it's really nothing magic about this, it's common sense. As a project manager for the prime contractor, this is what you're in charge of. As a subcontractor, the bigger your subcontract, the more some of these points will apply to your project manager. You may, for subcontractors, a lot of subcontractors, the project manager is the subcontractor owner, the rebar company owner, the concrete contractor owner. A lot of them do their own PM, but when you start getting bigger, you find out that you can't do the bidding, the paperwork, the payroll, and pound nails and pour concrete. You can't do it all. That comes with growth. So it's a function and it's reflective of the size of your company. So you're going to prepare that schedule of values. If it's, like I said, if it's already done for you on a Caltrans type of project, a road project, you have to prepare the CPM schedule, those submittals log. You're responsible for the safety program, or you might even have a safety officer who visits every job site. There's going to be a project meeting. Unfortunately, just like the corporate world, it seems that in the public sector, we can't do anything without a meeting. Well, I'm telling you, the meetings are productive, and depending on the CM and the owner and the designer and the quality of the drawings, the meetings can be an hour to an hour and a half to 4 hours long. And you and your superintendent will have to be in there. And there's always a lot of discussions. Typically, it's to discuss progress of the work. You're going to be making sure who's turning in the RFIs, the request for information. And I'm going to go over all of these individually to give you examples. You're going to deal with the owner's rep, and your superintendent will be scheduling the inspections. You're going to do the payment application. You're going to deal with the change orders, and you're going to deal with the closeout procedures, and you assign them down. And once they're established, you assign them down to the field personnel. I'm going to stop right there and take a couple of questions, maybe for a 10-minute break. You can have a cup of coffee and we can discuss anything that you might have, any questions you might have regarding what I've said so far.
Just want to remind folks as well that you can click the raise your hand button and I can enable you to speak a question out loud if that's preferable.
Okay, I had my sip of coffee. There were no questions, at least not yet. So let's talk about some of these handouts that are reflective of the comments I just made. Oops, that's not the right one. There we go. What's a purchase agreement? Well, I think all of you know what a purchase order is. A PO can be done in the private sector with a little one-sheet tablet with a carbon copy underneath. Very, very few people use those anymore for the major work. Most of us contractors learned long ago, if I just fill out a simple little PO and I refer to the supplier's quote and then sign it and agree to buy it that way, I have no legal standing with them to make sure that A, what they're selling me complies with the specifications, B, that it meets the, it comes in on time, and any details about quality or follow-up, et cetera. Guarantees, warranties. So we prime contractors learned long ago, my threshold of pain is simply $10,000. If I'm going to buy anything for a project that costs more than 10 grand, I'm going to use a purchase agreement. Anything less, I may use a standard PO form, but I'll take a look at that on a case-by-case basis. But when you start paying 5 figures for a piece of equipment or some material, and it's for your public works contract, you better darn well make sure it meets the same criteria that you bid the job under, i.e. the plans and specs. So this purchase agreement, in essence, is a little short form subcontract. For example, this one, we were doing a job for a fire station. We were had to buy an above ground diesel fuel storage and fuel dispensing system. So there's what I'm buying. And there's a note here. The fuel storage tank being proposed by Balch Petroleum is not manufactured by the company that was specified on the bid documents. Balch Petroleum is expected to make formal requests for substitution of an equal product. Why did we write this out for them? Well, they told us, no problem, we exceed the specifications. The architect just didn't list us as an approved equal, but we know we can get it approved. And we said, okay, fine, then it's up to you. We had a backup tank, by the way, for this, just in case they didn't pass. So a key comment, furnish all necessary shop drawings, submittals, O&M manuals for plans and specs. Price includes taxes and freight. Exclusions, they're not responsible. This was an FOB job site, freight on board, meaning delivered to the job site item. Purchase price, payment terms, which tie into the payment terms for me, 95% paid and then 5% retention. Assignment, changes, general indemnity, entire agreement. I highlighted that because it says vendor agrees to be bound to contractor to the same extent that contractor is bound to owner. I think that pretty well explains it. If you go, I mentioned this yesterday, if you go to any major general contractor, many of them, and the Peter Kiewit example I gave yesterday, they have on their website their sample purchase agreement along with a sample subcontract agreement. And you will use theirs. As I said yesterday, we primes do not sign your proposal, subcontractors. You sign our subcontract. What are submittals? You cannot furnish anything to a public works project unless it's approved by the A&E, either the designer, the architect, or the engineer. I mean, and it goes down to the bare basics. You're all familiar, hopefully you're all familiar with the term waddle, W-A-D-D-L-E. That's those little fibrous rolls of fiber type material wrapped in a netting that you see around all the drain inlets along the curb and gutter on a roadway project. And you see that orange fencing, and you'll see a roll of this stuff. It's linear foot. It's about 8 inches in diameter, and it's to prevent erosion control. That's not prevent it. It provides the erosion control of silt getting into the storm drain systems. That wattle is nothing more than, it's a straw-like substance. You have to turn in a spec sheet on that. That's a submittal. This handout you can read later at your convenience because it's very detailed. It explains everything about what the term submittal covers, and it may include, at the very least, procedures. A submittal is a procedure. And you're looking at a building project, you can't start the demolition without a demolition plan. That's a submittal. CPM schedules a submittal. The schedule of values is a submittal. Shop drawings are submittal. Product data, samples and mock-ups, manufacturer's instructions, certificates, as-built drawings, O&M manuals, everything that's going to go into the. Here's what it amounts to. The architect, engineer, designer, they want to make sure that what you're installing, providing for this project is exactly or equal to what they specified. And the only way they can be sure of that is for you to give them documentation. And that's what a submittal is. You have to track them. Here's a nice, very simple Excel format submittals log. This would be kept by the prime. Now, there's some of you, I'm sure some of you are, might be A&E firms, or you might be construction management firms. And you're gonna say, well, Ed, there's software that does this. You're absolutely correct. There's software that does this. You recall, I said I have 50 plus years experience of doing this. Okay, I'm a dinosaur. Well, we developed all these templates in the days before Primavera. And you know what? It's worked. The only thing we use in software is Microsoft Project. Our projects keep getting bigger, so we're probably going to have to wind up going with one of the more popular ones that many primes use is Procore. Procore is a project management software program. None of those are cheap, folks. So if you're a small contractor, I suggest you start crawling before you start walking and running. And the simplest way to do that is build your own templates. It's nothing magic about this. Very simple. On a submittal, I get my submittal on fencing. Here's the day I received it from the sub, the day I turned it into the architect, the day I got it back, the turnaround time days, the day I send it back to the sub, and was it approved or not, no exceptions taken, whatever, right? That's the status of it. That's a submittal log. Nothing magic, but it is one of the most handy tools you'll ever run into. And I want to take a moment to emphasize the turnaround time. Unfortunately, for too many years in our industry, especially the public works industry, there existed this antagonism and adversarial relationship between designer and contractor. Too many designers had the concept that all contractors are crooks, and too many contractors said all owners and I&E firms are clueless and are always trying to chisel me. So partnerships were fewer in the years. It was very difficult to turn that around. It has turned around. However, during that time, we found out that a project could absolutely be delayed if the turnaround time was too long. And I'm sorry to say, a lot of A&E firms sometimes still don't get it, that we need rapid response. We need a decision. And so when you track these days that this fencing turned, 22 days for a fencing submittal is a ridiculous long amount of time. Same thing with the roofing. 14 days or less is what it should be. On the larger jobs, BART, big wastewater treatment plants, the plans and specs, they'll right into the submittal section, they'll say 30-day turnaround time. Every designer, I'm speaking as a contractor now, every designer who always utilizes the maximum amount of time allowed in the contract is no partner. They're not helping the job at all. And I'm telling you, well, take a look at this plumbing submittal. 66 days turnaround. Is that always the fault of the designer? Of course not. It could be that the first submittal was deficient and the second resubmittal was deficient. Those things can happen. But you need to track that time, because if the project is delayed and there was nothing wrong with your submittal other than they took 22 days to turn it around, you're going to need to have documentation that the delay was not your fault, because they're getting ready to assess liquidated damages. I talked about those yesterday. It's a big deal, folks. Here's what a typical Microsoft project CPM looks for a project. I'm just giving you one simple example. Most of you who have done public works, especially if you're on the A&E side, you may be familiar with this already. If you're a smaller subcontractor, you may never have seen something like this. Microsoft Project is a very affordable piece of software, and it'll handle everything up to $20 million. So that's what we use exclusively. We don't do mega projects, so we've never had the need to invest in Primavera. Let me make a little notation on CPM schedules. Because it's the prime's responsibility, you as a subcontractor merely need to tell me where you're going to fit in this sequence of events. I'll tell you where the general location is, and then you have to tell me if that's enough days for your work. I have a client right now that's arguing with the prime about a glass and glazing installation on a BART project, and they're having a heck of a time. They told the contractor from day one they needed X number of days to install their work, and they're being shorted on it. Fortunately for them, they have it documented that it was on their very first response to the initial draft of the schedule. However, if you go to the job site, you'll find that for every job, say under 5 million, the 3-week look ahead is what governs. That's how our field personnel will judge their progress. And it is nothing more than plotting, again, on an Excel spreadsheet, plotting a 3-week window, mark out the holidays and the weekends. This is a November 7th through December 2nd. This is just an example. And what's going to be done in those weeks, in those 3 weeks, and on what days, and just put X marks the spot. Very simple, right? Nothing complicated. You'd be amazed at how efficiently you can monitor your progress with what we call the 3-week look ahead schedule. They are so efficient and so popular that they are usually made a part of every public works project, written into the specifications, that the prime will not only prepare a CPM schedule with Microsoft Project or Primavera, but they will provide a 3-week look ahead schedule, updated weekly. Very simple little RFI, request for information template. To and from, spec section, subject, job name and address. What's the question? Your reply is requested by such and such a date. Here's the area of work affected and the schedule impact. And then below that, be a place for the A&E's firms for their reply. Signed and dated. I'll tell you how old I am. I was the project manager on the American Airlines terminal expansion. It's SFO in 1980. Was it 1980? We didn't even have RFIs then. We could still call the architect or engineer or construction manager. We could call them and say, we've got a question on the plans about this detail. Can you explain? Believe it or not, this is in the days before fax machines too. Now in public works, the RFI is a standard SOP. It is a standard document, and every piece of software out there, every general contractor and a lot of subcontractors have developed their own RFI form. This is all you need to have on it. This is all the information that's necessary, and it's utilized. You track these just like you track a submittal. Same thing, right? Again, the turnaround time. These get even more critical than the submittals log, because here, if we have an issue, it's brought up during construction, and we need an answer now because we got people standing around. This detail called for on the drawings doesn't work, doesn't apply. It's not buildable, whatever. Okay, there's an issue, there's a question. We need an answer. And a lot of times that answer, if it comes way too late, you've affected the progress of the work and delayed it. And that's going to come back to the architect engineer. But it's not going to be their fault if you as a contractor, sub or prime, don't document. I'm really sorry that we all have to be so paperwork conscious, but you can attribute that to progress. You can attribute that to the public contract code, but most of all, you can attribute that to the legal atmosphere that exists in this state of California. Everybody wants to sue everybody. And it's all about CYA and document. And like the old saying, the boys out in the field will say, if it ain't in writing, it never happened. And people have selective memory. When we go back, oh, you remember 3 weeks ago when we asked you, did you want us to put that extra rebar on the footing or not? Because we think it's deficient. Oh yeah, well, we should have had it. You should have put it in. We missed that. Well, now the footing won't pass seismic rating. So whose fault is that? They're going to come back and say, well, you should have known. There's too many parties out there, both sides of the fence, that aren't willing to stand up and say, okay, I made a mistake. It's my responsibility. For a long time, the standard mantra was shove it down the contractor's throat. And you know what? We're not stupid forever. We got wise and we learned how to document everything. So I'm telling you out there that are subcontractors and prime contractors, if you're not documenting everything on a weekly basis, you're putting yourself at risk, especially in a public works arena. And that's done with RFIs, with daily diaries, field messages. This explains how it could be done, the information that should be put on a daily diary. For the bigger jobs, we'll have our young interns or project engineers, that will do the filling out the daily diary under the direction of the superintendent. Talk about trades on, from a primes perspective, we're going to note trades on site, number of workers and location of the work, the weather, equipment, deliveries, visitors, accidents, obviously, and no-shows. Why would I put no-shows? Same thing, folks, back to the documentation. If my drywaller was due on next Monday and they didn't show up for a week, they just delayed the schedule a week, and I've got it documented. This is a template. Again, there's all kinds of software out there that has generate these for you. Procore and Primavera and all the project management software that's out there, they all have a form. If you can't afford the software, do your own form. It's not rocket science. I've shown you a pay request could be on the unit price methodology, which is the Caltrans type, the heavy civil type of project. And I think you got the point. If you don't, I can explain in detail later. But what about the lump sum projects? The fire station, the police station, the school building. They're not set up on a bid form on a unit price basis. At least they shouldn't be. I've seen some attempts to do that, and it gets completely out of hand. But when you have a lump sum project like this, I'm giving you the example of a project that kind of utilizes the numbers that we had bid on a project, and we got the job. So we put in our general conditions, mobilizations, bonds and insurance, earthwork and paving, underground utilities, so forth, down the line. And when I total up, down at the bottom of the sheet, 1,278,550, that's the amount of my contract. So in other words, I took my estimate sheet and I distributed my profit and overhead markup into all these items. They include subcontractor cost, my profit and overhead, my materials costs, and obviously my labor costs and equipment. So that's all built in. That's how, this is an example of a breakdown for a lump sum project. This form comes right out of the AIA, American Institute of Architects. It's been used for, I don't know, 100 years. It's very standard. Everybody knows what it is. That's your lump sum method. So how do we bill on that? This is where your spreadsheets come in, so Excel comes in so handy. It records the previous period, it records this period, and the to-date progress. So the percentage complete on general conditions is 25%. That generates 53,750 of revenue. And that was previous. I'm 15% complete this 30-day period. That generates 32,250. That puts me at 40% complete, which typically ties to my schedule. If I've spent 40% of my general conditions, I should be 40% complete. We'll see. And that's generated 86,000 to date. And there's my balance to finish on that line item. out on the right. And go down through the divisions. And then you simply add change orders at the end as they come along. We added a flammable storage building, deleted the emergency generator, deleted some tree removal, deleted the LPG tank and fittings. Change order number 2, it was also a delete. Subcontractor, subgrade remediation was an add. ABS versus cast iron pipe was a credit. Temporary water service was that. And same process applies. So at the total of all sheets, they equate to 30% complete for a pay request of $402,085 for this period. And that will bring me to 51% complete. And there's my contract amount to date. It's been billed to date. And there's my amount remaining. This check is $402,085. I will turn in an invoice for that in a summation that simply says, for this period, I'm billing $402,085, and I will deduct 5% for the retention. So I'm going to get a check for 95% of that 402. Again, this is an SOP type form used by the AIA and used by building contractors for decades. All right, I'm gonna go forward, and we're gonna come back to these last 4 slides, these last 4 handouts, because they deserve a little more attention. And here we have the bugaboo of change orders, claims, and disputes. You know, we need to recognize changes, their effect on the schedule, an overview of the types of claims, and avoidance of disputes and preventing practice. There's been a myth out there for 100 years that contractors love change orders. Well, that's probably true in the private sector. And let me tell you, in the public sector, we hate them. Now, why would I say that? Because if you go to, I'll challenge you to prove me wrong. Go pick up any project out there, public works, school building, fire station, police station, wastewater treatment plant, to go take a look at the section in the general conditions on change orders. They all will define the markup allowed. So you're not going to cash in on gravy saying, oh, I got an extra, I'm gonna make a killing in these change orders. No, you're not, because the markups are set. And I'm telling you, the markups are not enough. They're inadequate. For example, if I have a $50,000 change order and it happens to be all subcontractor work, all I can mark it up is 5%. So I've added $50,000 to my contract, but I only made 5% on that one. That doesn't cover my profit or my overhead. That's $2,500. Okay, so how am I going to cover the? We've had many change orders where, because it was mostly subcontractor work, it doesn't pay for the time for my project manager to fill out the paperwork. So you need to be aware of that. I have a lot of subcontractors that that's their first big slap in the face on a public works project. We get a legitimate change order. It's legitimate. The owner's happy that we're going to do this extra work. The subcontractor's happy that they're going to be given some more work, and they turn in their price. And the CM comes back and says, well, yeah, it looks about right, but your markup's all wrong. What do you mean markup? I'm putting my standard 10 and 10 and 15. Well, no, you don't get that. You get 5% or 10%. The markups on change orders are not a good deal on public works. There's different types of claims, and we want to try to avoid those disputes. As I just said, change order procedures and policy, they're in the specs. They're in the general conditions, Division 1. And let me tell you, they are detailed, specific, and lengthy. They'll get down to, you can't believe how detailed they will get, including what kind of a markup they want back on deleted work. So just be aware, we have no input on that. That contract was written way before the project ever went out to bid. And once it gets in the contract documents, it's the Bible. So we want to talk about some of the types of claims for scope change, who can authorize a change order, the effect of change orders, negotiation methodology, change order pricing, proper documentation of changes to the work. Well, the first type is the simple one. The owner says, I want to put another bay at the end of the warehouse. I want to expand the size of the warehouse. Wonderful. We get a drawing from the designer. We put together our price. We haggle a little bit. Hopefully you're not trying to gouge them and they're not trying to chisel you. And you come to an agreement. You sign a change order and we proceed on our merry way. That's the best kind of change order. Then there's the change order work triggered by faulty design issues. And you heard me say it in the session number 1. 90% of the projects of the plans and specs out on the street today in public works, they're not really ready to be put out to bid. You can always tell by how many addendums are issued. Once you go past 3 addendums, 4 addendums, any more than that, and I guarantee you there's going to be change orders on that project. So then there's the type where you simply want a time extension. Weather days, extra time for added scope, that'll be added into as part of my change order request. Or a scheduled delay due to an outside entity or a CM designer failure to address a problem. That was the part where I said about RFIs. Claim by contractor for added expense due to force majeure. That's outside entities. Wasn't the CM, wasn't the owner. It was COVID-19. What's my extra expense? Well, we're working inside to finish the drop ceiling on this laboratory building, and I would put 5 people in there because it's a huge room. No, they got to stay 6 feet apart, and they have to stop and clean their tools. And whatever the protocol dictates, and the feds have put those flyers out. Well, that means my productivity is going down and my labor cost is going to increase. I'm going to claim added expense because that is like an act of God, so to speak. I'm looking at my industry newsletters and I'm seeing that some of the owners are already responding to this and adding a clause to the jobs that are out to bid that you're not going to get any extra for COVID-19 policy and procedures. You better put it into your bid. Well, if it's in the job specs and you haven't bid it yet, then you better figure out what reduced productivity due to COVID-19 is going to cost and put that in your price. And the last one is the worst. That's a disputed claim. I turn in the RFI and I say, this column post connection at the beam up above, it does not work. It collides with a structural beam that's already there. It's a design flaw. And turn in the RFI and we say, please advise what you want us to do. And they come back, and I've had people tell me, build it per plans and specs. Well, I can't. Well, then you figure out how to fix it. I've had architects tell me that. Well, okay, I can fix it. I can do an offset. I can reconfigure the connection, but that's going to cost you. Oh no, you should have known that. When you examined the drawings, you should have picked that up, and we're denying your claim. Here we go to the attorneys. Happens all the time, folks. So how can we prevent some of that? Well, one of the best ways is a constructability review and a contractor's pre-bid RFIs. What's a constructability review? It's a third set of eyes that look at them after the architect engineer draw the plans. They have a CM, but really more preferably a contractor. I've been arguing this for 25 years. Constructability reviews should be conducted by general contractors because we know what works and what doesn't work. The CM firms, some of them can do it if their CM rep has field construction experience, but an A&E firm is absolutely the wrong entity to be doing a constructability review. And the contractor pre-bid RFIs, well, we found problems with the drawings. I'd be an idiot not to bring that up. Excuse me. At the pre-bid conference before we even bid the job. Point out, Mr. or Miss Designer, did you see that this such and such detail on sheet 7 doesn't work, or whatever your comment may be, and then it can get addressed before the job actually the bids are called for. That'll come up in an addendum. If you have a designer who doesn't have a chip on their shoulder, thinking that all we're trying to do is pick their plans apart. Seen that a lot. Have a thorough discussion on these problems. Some of these problems brought up by the contractor at the pre-construction meeting. There's nothing works as well as heading off a problem in the design and the drawings with the parties before anything is put in place, before we dig a hole, before we pour concrete, before we put up a wall. Let's talk about some issues. Probably, if you work with me, as I'm me being the prime, if you work with me and my subs, we'll come up with a solution that doesn't cost anything. But you gotta work with us. Prompt review of all RFIs by the A&E with a rapid turnaround. Works wonders, people. Partnering between the parties for equitable treatment. Fair pricing by the contractor. Okay, folks, on our side, no gouging. Nothing will destroy your credibility faster than trying to stick it to your owner on a change order. It will come back to bite you every time. So I'm going to come back to this now. I'm going to go back to the handouts. When we do have a change order that is disputed, or a request for a change order that is disputed, then you need to document what it's costing. I've always worked under the premise that once we have a dispute that I'm asking for money for this claim, this change order, and you have denied it. Okay. First of all, let's get the cost, the pricing off the table. How do we do that? With the contractor would provide a daily work, extra daily work report. It can be done for positive change orders that are not disputed, and it absolutely needs to be done for change orders that are disputed. You can read this at your leisure when you get the slides, but it explains what I'm talking about. But here's what it boils down to. This comes right out of the Caltrans construction manual. We utilize their format. And what I'm saying when I say get the pricing off the table, okay, on day one, I'm starting on this alleged extra work that you say I'm not liable for, that you're not liable for, that I'm not entitled to extra compensation. Okay, well, we're not going down without a fight. We're going to argue this more. But for now, we're going to make sure that every day we're doing this disputed work, it's logged in. The equipment, the labor, the hours, and the materials done. And I want the owner's rep to sign it. I'm not going to sign that, Ed, because no, that's why I put in this paragraph in our form. Acknowledged for field verification of work effort only. Signature does not authorize approval for payment. I've had Caltrans engineers, I've had wastewater district engineers tell me, the smart ones, they realize this is for their protection too. When we get to the claims hearing, all that needs to be discussed is the merit. Is it compensable or is it not? If it's not, denied, problem goes away, and the only way I'm gonna try again is I'm gonna have to file a lawsuit. If it is compensable after arguments and the owner and architect engineer decide, yeah, you're right. I guess your use of well, I lost my train of thought there. The argument of we're going to discuss the merit. Is it compensable or not? Then that's all that should be discussed, because if it is compensable, the cost is the cost is the cost, and you've got this 5-7 day record of documentation that shows this is what they were out there doing. And this change order work. Now, at the claims hearing, it's been judged that it is compensable and that they're entitled to whatever that cost is, okay? And you track these, same thing. Nothing fancy. Again, there's software out there that does this. As a prime, you're going to have to track them all. As a sub, you're only going to track what applies to you. Go back to the end, and then I'll come back to the last slide. Project closeout. All your major projects, they will absolutely have a specific write-up and documentation and procedure of how to close out the project. So it's important that you know what it is, importance of rapid closeout, and establish yourself a checklist. And it will cover that section in the specs, and the general conditions will cover punch list procedures, as-built drawings, O&M manuals, warranties and guarantees, building permit checkoffs, final inspection, notice of completion, filing and clearance of all stop notices. That's how we end up on the project. Now, This is a timeline, a guideline for public works, how to keep you in business. And there's just some suggestions that you need to do. It's self-explanatory. It's 2 pages long. You can read it in detail when you get the slides, but essentially I'm saying set up your company books, get a line of credit, get insurance, start looking for how to find work. I suggest joining a builder's exchange. Check the websites, network with generals, get a bid calendar, prepare your scope letter. We discussed that in detail. What to do in estimating your project. After winning the bid, for you subs, read that subcontract that's sent to you by the general contractor. Look for untenable clauses that are too one-sided. Ask for a copy of the CPM schedule. And believe it or not, make sure the contract scope that they write up matches your bid proposal, your scope letter. I've had clients, subcontractors, come to me and say, well, this guy wants me to do this, and I didn't include it in my bid. I said, well, good. Is it on your scope letter? Yep, here's the exclusion. So why is he keep telling you you have to do this? Let me see your contract. Well, it was written into the contract. I said, you signed it. And he said, well, I didn't take the time to read it. Well, I can't help you. You signed it saying, agreeing that you would include that extra scope of work. Mobilize and start work, we talked about that today. And then how to manage the project. And then how to close out. So it's kind of a summation of what I've been talking about. Not a guarantee that you're going to be successful, but it's worked for us. We've been in business 34 years, so I don't know what to tell you. That's the presentation for today. And at this point in time, let's talk about questions that apply to the construction side. So it looks like I only have 4 questions. Is the MSDS typically included with the submittal? Yep. Yes, they are. If a change order is an increase or a decrease in quantity, line items, is the change based on contract unit pricing? Excellent question. Yes, it is. This brings up a mathematical question that's tied to cost. And that's where, and again, we all learned it the hard way. So the bid item calls for, let's say, 5,000 linear feet of curb and gutter. I'm just gonna come up with a hypothetical example. All right. For 5,000 feet, there's a quantity of a scale, a quantity of scale. There's a better price based on more stuff, more volume. I can do it for a little cheaper on a linear foot basis, right? So I give them a price of $20 a square foot. During the life of the project, they made some big changes, and they cut the 5,000 linear feet of curb and gutter to 500 feet. And at $20 a foot, I'm not making any money. So Caltrans acknowledges that. So if it's a decrease or an increase of 25% in quantity, then the contractor is allowed to increase for decreased quantity, and they are asked to decrease their price on an increase in quantity. So it's a two-way street. We'll be able to get the handouts in a Form Excel so we can use them. Yeah, I'll give you the templates, but guys, I'm giving you a PDF. You ought to be able to do your own, but I will do that. What does CPM schedule mean? Critical Path Method. It's based on the shortest, it establishes the shortest possible time that you can build the project. James would like to answer this question live.
That's just my way of checking them off the list, Ed.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, well, let me reemphasize that everything I've talked about has been a guideline. As far as the subject matter and the sequence of events, everything I've talked about absolutely occurs on a public works project. And it's simply a magnitude of scale depending on the size of the contract. The smaller the job, the less formality and the less value or magnitude of the individual items. They're all going to happen. All those tasks are going to be required. They just won't be as difficult. They won't be as complicated. It won't take as long. The bigger the job, you start doing a $7, $8, $9, $10 million project, and you can have a full-time project engineer at the trailer just to keep up with the paperwork. And you get into a project like the Golden State Arena or the 49er Stadium, and they had a complex of 60-foot trailers in there that they had about 30 to 40 people at the job site. It's just a function of scale. Bigger the job, more complicated it gets. But everything here that I've talked about today is industry practice. And the methodology that you have on in utilizing these concepts, it's just going to help you be more efficient. So once you get the contract, this is what's going to happen, folks. So if there's no more questions, I thank you for your attention. Thanks to you that attended all 4 sessions, and feel free to contact me through PTAC Norcal. My email address is very simple to remember, ed@norcalptac.org. So, thank you again. James, back to you.
Ed, and thanks for giving all your time for these 4 presentations. It's been a pleasure to host them with you. And of course, thanks to Patricia Silva from Caltrans District 2 for providing her expertise as well. She is also a resource that I'm reaching out to. She's a huge help and a nice person as well. So we're wrapping it up now. As I mentioned before, we've been recording this session. So all the Q&A and all of it will be uploaded to YouTube and posted to our website. And I'll give you a link to that. We will also upload all the documents that Ed viewed here with the handouts, as well as the slide deck in PDF form. So you're going to get a big data dump. Go ahead and check it out. I will have it uploaded no later than this time tomorrow. Sometimes it takes a little longer to get the Excel templates and things like that if Ed needs to grab those from a database. But you can check on our website, norcalptac.org, go to resources, then down to past webinars. That's where all of the resources are going to go. So thanks again to everyone for joining, especially if you've joined all 4 of them, and appreciate it. When you exit this webinar today, you're going to be directed to a Google form link, and that's where we present you our survey. And on this exit survey, if you just tell us what you thought of this webinar and the webinar series, it would be a huge help to us. We put a lot of work into these, and we're happy to make it happen. So thanks everyone, and have a good Thursday. Bye-bye.